and she told me the story on a first date of burritos and margaritas. I joined the Army when I was 20. I was already an RN, so I had not only been to the gynecologist before, but had assisted with the procedure numerous times. On the first day of boot camp, they lined the women of my class up naked to examine us for scoliosis and other things like that. They did it one by one in a line, just like you would see in the movies. Then they called us into a separate room for our gynecology exams. I was first. I walked in and saw a dozen or so speculum standing on the table. They ordered me to get on the table and put my feet in the stirrups. The doctor asked me if I was gay first. I said no, which was partly true because I had joined the military to get away from the recent revelation that I was indeed a lesbian. He then said, "Well, I assume you've had sex then," and proceeded to forcefully shove the speculum inside me. He used no lube and was extremely rough. I held back the tears, and despite the fact that I knew it was wrong, I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I walked out of the room and looked at the other women standing there, many of whom had just turned 18 and had probably never had sex or been to the gynecologist. I just half smiled in a reassuring way. I wanted to say, "No, don't go in there. It's not right." But I did nothing. The last story is Sarah's, who's a 25-year-old poet. When I was 16, I went to see my doctor to see about the issue of my body hair and to ask if they thought I had some kind of hormonal imbalance. They recommended that I see a gynecologist. I honestly don't remember the exam, just being angry that I was being made to go to the gynecologist. They wrote a prescription for 3 different medications, but I determined that my hormones weren't actually hurting me, so I never got the prescriptions filled. So then I just wanted to fucking drop the matter, but the gynecologist recommended, and I still can't fucking believe how unbelievably fucking stupid this is, that I got a blood test to see whether I had a gene that would cause my fictional children to be hairy. I am not making this shit up. I told my parents that I didn't want to do it because I didn't even want to have children in the first place, much less care if I had a hairiness gene that would be passed down to them. But they made me go anyway, since apparently if I did have said gene, there was some kind of medication I could take during pregnancy that would stop my children from being hairy. And then I heard the fucking doctor whisper to my dad that she checked my clitoris to make sure that it wasn't enlarged, but mine was fine. Yeah, of course my fucking clitoris is fine. Oh, and I don't have the scary hairy gene. I later perfected the invention and named the device the Speculum. It was the finest invention known to man. It enabled me to investigate the organs of a woman's pelvis without actually having to touch them, which was a huge relief to me. I realized that there was a bit of pain involved for the women, but it was impossible to avoid. The important thing is that I cured many hundreds of the lesser sex of their ailments and opened the door to many more cures after my life and into the future. Let me read one last time from my intriguing autobiography entitled The Story of My Life. I have always said this book was a mere accident, that I never intended to write it. that would have previously led to a life of hardship. Can you see? Do you need me to change positions? Hello? Can you see? I mean, can you see me as a whole person? Hello? Oh. Hello. We really need to stop meeting like this. I feel like you're having a hard time seeing me. I mean, all of me. As a whole person, as a complete person. As I gathered these stories, I noticed that they seem to have this theme of loss of control running through them. They all talk of being watched and medically objectified. I wanted these stories to tell of women's strength and taking back gynecology, but they didn't. Just when I was about to give up and end the story as a tragedy, my friend Boston told me that you can also get gynecological care from a midwife. Did you know that you can get gynecological care from a midwife? I'll admit, it was news to me. So I did some research. Not only was Boston correct, but I also found out that the whole invention of the speculum took gynecology away from the midwives so that doctors were only looking at small and isolated parts of women without seeing their entire beings. Oh my God. Maybe Dr. Sims was like really into BDSM. Maybe he was actually the father of modern medical